Can speed painting an army still mean having great looking models? Yes, absolutely. My name is Tak and I've speed painted projects like this one, and this one. This one I had help with. This one was a giant team effort. And I didn't get much sleep pulling off this one. With the upcoming release of the new contrast paints, we thought this would be a good time to give you a quick showcase of some of our speed paint projects. Games Workshop sent us a set to try, and I'm really looking forward to using them on future projects. I try a few of them and will show you the results a bit later in this video. I've yet to master how to film a paint tutorial, so I'll give you this army showcase overview thing instead because that is what I know what to do. Maybe one day that will change, hopefully maybe. One of our most recent projects is this 100 model Ork army. We reached this fidelity in about 10 days. In the past, I would apply a base coat through an airbrush and then pick out details by hand. Contrast paint sped up the non-airbrush stages of my process quite a bit. Airbrush speed painting has some disadvantages. It required that most models were predominantly one color, like my Ultramarines. Or the model had to be kind of muddy, where overspray would be acceptable, like on these Death Guard Plague Marines. I don't think I would have ever tried to speed paint an Ork army without the invention of contrast paints. But the first generation of contrast paints were not perfect. The first trial I did, the colors would pull and create contrast, just like advertised, but not exactly the way I wanted it to. This is, however, the contrast paint working as intended. It is creating tonal variation in the model. However, the larger or flatter the surface area, the more I dislike the pooling or effect created by letting the paint choose what it wanted to do. Contrast paints thus became a base coat step. It was a fast way to fill in all the colors on a model, and I would then go in with an airbrush later to regain control of the shadows and highlights. Once I had the model properly shaded, I would do a quick highlight step and boom, one Ork done, 99 more to go. I had to get this army done for a campaign as well as a big 20,000 combined points 40k feature we released earlier this year. With some help from Tycho, who did the base coat for all the commandos and some of the Snagga boys, we set out to complete this project in 2 weeks. The Ork skin is contrast paint Ork flesh, and the clothing was snakebite leather. Both Blood Angels Red and Flesh Tear Red were used on various armor and weapons. That made up most of the base. With an airbrush, I went in and applied more shadow where I thought it was needed and went all the way up to white for highlights. My goal with the Force, if given a very small amount of time, is to punch the contrast as high up as I can go and grab as many small details as I can. The high contrast is especially important as this allows viewers to distinguish parts of the miniature in wide shots or if you're at a gaming table from a few feet away. I also committed to only having some models get the edge highlight treatment. My favorite model is the Death Dread. I had a lot of fun shading it and adding all the scratch marks. We barely finished the army on time before shooting began, and I love how vibrant they appear on camera. Speaking of vibrancy, I'm really liking some of the new paints in the contrast line. First off, these models were primed with a new White Scar primer from Games Workshop. I typically do not like priming white. White primer would always leave a speckle effect, and then translucent paints would accentuate those as they went on. The new White Scar primer goes on much smoother, and thus so did the contrast paint. I will be starting a new Adeptus Mechanicus army, and am very much enjoying the finish and saturation of Ball Red. While I have to stick to my current paint formula for my Ultramarines, I did like the new blues. I especially like the effect of Pilar Glacier. It definitely feels more like a technical paint, and I'll be using it for snow and ice. Maybe on the next batch of Horus Heresy Space Wolves. I am very excited for all the new greens as well. This test model is Mantis Warrior, Striking Scorpion, and Corandus Green. Mantis Warrior had the most tonal variants, and I can see a lot of use for it. I can also see why there are so many positive reviews for the new Imperial Fist color. This really makes me want to dive into doing Imperial Fists. I'm always torn between starting a new Space Marine force or adding more to my Ultramarines. Earlier this year, when the new Black Templar models were released, I finally made a departure from Ultramarines and committed to a 1-week speed project. We had big plans for our take on Armageddon, and Black Templars would play a big part like they did in the Hell's Reach novel. I've always struggled with making black armor appear interesting, and I'm not very good with edge highlighting. Edge highlighting is also very time consuming and would not work within the time frame I had for this project. So I decided to heavily weather this force and utilize dirt and grime as accents on the black armor. I worked up a bit of a highlight using blues and light gray, and for the cloth I used Egoras Dunes, while weapons were done with Blood Angels Red. Even though the Redemptor Dreadnought is still my favorite model to paint, I think I'm the most proud of how the Crusader squad came out. The weathering evokes a sense of battle, a sense of a very long crusade. In the past 2 years, we've had 3 major box set projects. When 9th edition came out, we saw the release of the Indomitus set, with all the new Primaris and Necron sculpts. Age of Sigmar got the Dominion set, and as we got early access to the Horus Heresy Age of Darkness set, we got to participate in an event at Warhammer World. Warhammer 40k getting a new edition is always a big deal, and when Indomitus came out, we thought it would be a good idea to commit to 2 projects, a how to play video and a 40k in 40 minutes. Tycho, JT and myself set out to complete 2 box sets in 3 days. In order to be relevant with the new release, we thought we had to shoot and edit both projects in about a week, and so that gave us about 3 days for build and paint. The effort definitely seemed worth it, as we know many people have watched the How to Play video, and hopefully a majority of them found it helpful. The Age of Sigmar Dominion box set is probably my least favorite outcome for a speed paint project. I had 3 days with it, so we had planned a launch day livestream. The Uruks were heavily done with contrast paints, while the Sigmarites were 2 golds and a wash. Pretty basic. While I was happy that the project got done, it could have been better. The Horus Heresy Space Wolves project we did so that Nick could be part of the event at Warhammer World was probably the craziest speed paint project I've ever done. I take a lot of shortcuts for speed projects, but this one was going to be put on display at Warhammer World, so extra effort was put in. The models were all base coated in a very deep blue, and then worked up to a light gray using an airbrush. The blend involved a medium blue, a light blue, and a gray white. Originally, I'd hoped the gray step would be more gray so that it would be closer to the 30k color scheme. But once I saw the light gray blue on the models, I just committed to it. Once the base was done, all the models went to Tycho, and he did all the trim and details like weapons and holsters. The Contemptor Dreadnought was painted in sub-assembly and mostly done with an airbrush. My paint style is to try and go fairly dark for shadows and go right into white for highlights. I like to create contrast by using light modulation or panel lighting. Modulation is about creating unrealistic interactions of lights and shadows, so as to ensure that each individual aspect of the model will pop, where they may have blended together in a realistic setting. On this tank, when 2 armor panels meet, there is a highlight on one panel interacting with the shadow of the other panel. This technique helps you pick out the natural surfaces of the model from a distance. I think the end result is a striking force that has impact looking at it up close or from far away. My favorite model is the Contemptor Dreadnought, though I feel the Praetor came out pretty good as well. Well, that is it for this video. If you like this video, please hit that like button, leave a comment, or subscribe to the channel. Those actions help us understand if we should make more videos like this one. For now, this channel will continue to be primarily a gameplay channel. Diving into creating hobby content is a big endeavor. It requires new gear and new setups. With the help of our Patreon community and supporters, we are able to sustain this studio. And as that support grows, we hope to expand our efforts into doing more of what you want to see. And if it is more hobby content like this video or the Manta build video, leave a comment and let us know. Thank you for watching, and until we see you next time, play on.